I'm Tom Baker, and on the Chasing Cars channel, we cover the motoring industry around the world and here in Australia. And one of the biggest motoring stories of the year is the launch of Cupra. If you haven't heard of Cupra, you're about to see it everywhere. It's the newest Volkswagen Group brand, and it's been tasked with taking on emerging marques like Tesla. And Australia was chosen as the first major export market for this Spanish brand, with its range of 2 performance SUVs and 2 hot hatches, one of them fully electric. So why Australia? To find out, I sat down for an exclusive one-on-one interview with Cupra Global Chief Wayne Griffiths, and there were some really surprising answers, including on topics like sustainable fuels, future models, and the idea of a Cupra ute. So I hope you find the questions and answers enlightening. So Wayne, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I'd like to start by talking about why Australia. And the reason for this is, in recent years, it's actually appeared that Australia was a relatively low priority for the Volkswagen Group. We get cars 2 years after they launch in Australia, and launch in Europe, I should say. And one of the reasons stated has been our slow progress on emissions regulations. So it was a bit of a surprise actually for Cupra to announce that Australia was kind of the first major export market. So why did you come to this decision?
No, I think it allows us to be one of the first mover here as a new brand. Cupra's only existed for 4 years now. And we wanted to prove as well that we are a global brand and not just a brand for Spain or for Europe. And there's no place further away from Barcelona probably than Sydney. So it was a sign of our ambition to go global with Cupra, a brand from Spain. And we also believe as well that in the medium long term that Australia as well will be a market for battery electric vehicles and for plug-in hybrid cars.
Were there any particular traits or characteristics of the Australian market that you thought suited Cupra? We like our performance cars here, for instance.
Yeah, performance cars, my experience here as well. I've worked for other brands here as well. So I know a bit about the segmentation in the market, but there is people here like sporty cars, they like SUV cars as well. I think the Australians as well also have a good taste in terms of design and like provocative design. So those are things that Cupra stands for. Also that Australia is a very young-spirited, also a young market in general. The average age here is younger. Cupra's a very young brand. And is also forward-looking and looking ahead and not just fixed in heritage or past or history, and not hyped on prestige and premium and show-off and status, but more contemporary values, and that's all about what Cupra's about.
I see. How closely will you be monitoring the Australian market launch, the progress here, and what are your measures for success for Cupra Australia?
We'll be following up very closely. I mean, we're here today, and not only me, myself as CEO of the company, but also my Vice President for Sales and Marketing is here with me. My Vice President for Technical Development is here. So all of us as a team are committed to making Australia a success, delivering the products on time in the necessary volumes. But our measures of success obviously will be the amount of sales. It's important that Cupra becomes a relevant brand quickly in Australia. But more importantly than that for me, that it becomes a relevant brand, not just in terms of sales, but that hits a nerve with this new generation of car lovers, of Australian car lovers, that Cupra really does generate interest and desirability amongst this target group.
How possible do you think it will be to build sales to an acceptable number in Australia with the vehicles that Cupra is launching with first? Or is it a case that the second wave of cars, which you showed recently, will be when the brand can build that volume in Australia?
No, I think both. I mean, it's a two-phase approach. First phase with our current cars, so with the Cupra Leon, Cupra Formentor, our first fully electric, battery electric vehicle, the Cupra Born from next year. So that will be the first phase to gain some ground. And then in 2025, when the second phase of the product offensive kicks in with the Cupra Terramar, an SUV which I think will be big for Australia, the Cupra Tavascan, electric crossover, and the Cupra Urban Rebel, which I think will be an important car in terms of volume for the Australian market.
Picking up on the new models shown at Terramar, What does the expansion into vehicles like the Tavascan and the Terramar and even the Urban Rebel, what does that say about Cupra? Obviously it's expanding from a relatively focused small offering into a more fully featured broad range. Will that change the brand at all as it starts to move into mainstream segments?
I don't think the mainstream segments, and I don't think Cupra will ever be mainstream. We have a clear positioning between the mass segment and the premium segment, but we certainly don't want to be mainstream or be boring. We want to stand out because we stand for something, and what we stand for is a provocative design, to do cars that perhaps not everybody likes, that some people love. So to do a great design that you either love or hate perhaps, and combined with very sporty and fun to drive. And that also in an electric world where things can become so rational, we still want to be the emotional brand, offering great looking and cars that are great to drive.
Picking up on the Urban Rebel, I was speaking with Dr. Tietz at Terramar, and he was very proud of Cupra's success in being the lead brand for the platform underneath Urban Rebel. It strikes me as a high honour for the newest brand in the group to be taking charge of a critical platform for cheaper EVs. How did you manage to do that, and what does it mean for Cupra?
I think our company, obviously Seat, has been building small cars and now for many years in Spain. We've been doing that very successfully with high quality. We have great experience at doing that. So I think it was a natural choice for us using the Iberian Peninsula as the place to build the small electric cars for the future. We've also been working together with the Spanish government with our Future Fast Forward project, and have applied for support from European funding to help the project. So I think that was also crucial in the decision. And then obviously the capability and experience of our engineers has allowed us to get the job for developing the whole cluster for the small BEV family for the Volkswagen Group.
Well, congratulations. It's great to see, and a very cool looking vehicle, the Urban Rebel. So beyond vehicles like the Terramar, which here in Australia would be firmly in the mid-size SUV segment, even towards the smaller end of the mid-size SUV segment, do you see greater room for Cupra to expand beyond that? Here in Australia, 3-row SUVs are seen as quite critical. Is that something that could wear a Cupra badge?
I think first of all we have to do these two phases I spoke about before of our development. So with our current cars, with the future cars from 2025, and then if we're successful here as we plan to be, then we could obviously look at going more global than even Australia, looking at markets like the US. And then obviously if you're looking at markets like the US, then you would need bigger cars. But that would be for something in the future. First of all, we have to prove that Cupra is a success in Europe and can be a success outside of Europe. Then we can go the next step to even more global markets and perhaps even bigger cars.
We here, as you know, having spent time here, Australians certainly love a pickup truck. For a brand as chic as Cupra, can you ever see a commercial vehicle or a pickup element to this brand?
It wouldn't be my priority at the moment, but I would never say no. So I mean, why say no? But it's certainly not my priority. If I had to choose, I'd probably perhaps try and do a sports car before I do a pickup. And Cupra's a sporty brand, a design brand. And sport and design is normally more like a sports car than a pickup. But you never know. I mean, in
the Church of Australian Motoring Journalism, we get struck down if we don't ask the pickup question.
Okay.
So forgive me. Speaking of sports cars, in something like a Cupra Leon, you've got a hot hatch which is really light, and I've driven it on one of our big fast tracks here in New South Wales, and it's a hoot. Do you think there's a future for sports cars like that in a battery electric world that are lightweight? You know, you're in an elevated position in the industry. We hear all sorts of bluster about future technology. Do you think we will again see small, light performance cars?
I think you'll see with the Cupra Urban Rebel, I mean, it's a 4-meter urban car that we plan should drive like a go-kart and be emotional and great to drive. Obviously, battery electric vehicles feel heavier, but it depends how you manage and where you put that weight in the car and how you distribute that, how that's distributed. and how the setup of the car is with the suspension. So our target with the Cupra Urban Rebel is to create a really emotional, fun to drive experience. So I think with that car we should be able to deliver that.
So in your view then, the answer is not just bigger and bigger batteries, it's also other elements dynamically in the car?
Yeah, it's a combination at the end. I think obviously the battery technology and how that evolves and how the batteries can be lighter in weight, more powerful, charge faster, all those things we will see as battery technology improves. But at the end of the day, the driving experience will be a sum of the package and of the suspension, of the brakes, of the steering. I think when you drive the Cupra Born, for instance, for the first time, and you see what our engineers have been able to do with the platform technology there, they've made a big step forward, making that car feel very sporty to drive. So I think there's a lot you can do.
You've said that the Terramar will be the last combustion engined Cupra product. Will that vehicle have powertrains that are pure petrol and diesel, like not a hybrid in any way? And when do you think you'll sell your last Cupra vehicle with a combustion engine in it?
With the Terramar, we will be offering plug-in hybrid technology, but also normal combustion technology as well. When we will sell our last combustion engine will be decided by when our customers want to buy their last combustion engine on the one hand, and on the other hand on the legislation of the markets that we sell our cars in. And from 2035 onwards in Europe, probably it will be difficult to sell combustion engine cars that don't have zero emissions. So 2035 in Europe latest, I think combustion cars that don't have zero emissions. There are possibilities of combustion cars with zero emissions with synthetic fuels, but it's probably the last date for combustion cars. Outside of Europe, we will see how legislation there develops.
It sounds like, to me, you hold a candle for synthetic fuels then, and Porsche have had a lot to say about it, and in fact they're going to produce synthetic fuels in Tasmania here in Australia, which is great for us. Do you think there's a slim possibility you could still build combustion engines running synthetic fuels in the 2030s?
As long as they have zero emissions, and as long as the synthetic fuel is in some way affordable for the customer, then why not? I think we shouldn't be dogmatic about the technical solutions, perhaps dogmatic about what we need to achieve. Zero emissions, yes, but how to achieve that, whether that's battery electric vehicles, whether that's hydrogen, whether that's synthetic fuels. I mean, I'm not the engineer or the scientist, but I would never be dogmatic. I think, however, we need to focus on reducing emissions now. And the only way to do that at the moment for passenger vehicles is with battery electric vehicle technology. And that's what we're focusing on.
Do you think that hydrogen fuel cell is not the way forward for passenger cars?
I think not at the moment. The numbers show that not at the moment, that is not viable. But then again, I would never be dogmatic there either. I mean, we should continue developing in different areas. But in terms of implementing and moving ahead and hitting the targets, particularly for Europe, for 2030 for the reduction, we will have to speed up on selling battery electric vehicles.
In your role, you head up both SEAT and Cupra. It seems to me that Cupra is now pretty divergent from SEAT. Would you like to see Cupra run independently within the group, and would you do it?
I already do it. So would I do it is a hypothetical question. I already do it. Cupra is my baby, if you like. I was one of the founders or co-founders of Cupra. I mean, my heart is in it. I always said it's my destiny somehow in the industry to have this unique opportunity of creating a new brand. How often do you have that in your career? I could tell you probably only once. So I've had that opportunity. Cupra is a standalone brand already. It's a strong brand in the Volkswagen Group. I think it adds value in the Volkswagen Group where it's positioned. So it has a good future in the Volkswagen Group, which obviously I want to be part of.
Do you think that there's important efficiencies to keeping it effectively next to SEAT, however? You know, it's not independent to the level that Audi is independent from Volkswagen.
I think it's important that we share and use Volkswagen Group technologies, platforms, synergies, economies of scale on the one hand, but on the other hand, make sure that the differentiation of our product is strong enough and authentic enough. Because Cupra, we don't want to be a marketing story, we want to be a brand story. And that brand will always be based on strong products that are true enough and differentiated enough in what they stand for. So in terms of design, but also in terms of performance there, we will not make compromise.
You've said before, including in Terramar, that within the group, Cupra exists partially to compete with new and emerging brands. Why do you think it was important for the group to have a specific manufacturer to do that, rather than Seat or Volkswagen, for instance?
I mean, the Volkswagen Group has probably the best brand portfolio in the world, from Bugatti, Lamborghini, Porsche, Volkswagen, Audi, Seat, Skoda. But Cupra is the only brand new brand from scratch. And I believe that it's important to have a brand in this area, because there's a generation of new car lovers out there that want to drive a different brand than what their parents or grandparents drove. And if they can't find that, they will go outside and find that somewhere else. They want brands that stand out for contemporary values, not necessarily for heritage and tradition. They want brands that stand out for sustainable and for being cool, and not just for being show-off, status, prestige symbol. I think that's changing. This value these values of the customers are changing, of the next generation, and I think Cupra can hit a nerve there.
And my final question, some have said that Cupra will be the Tesla of the Volkswagen Group. Do you think that's an accurate characterization of how this brand will look in 2030 when your portfolio is largely battery electric?
I don't think we want to copy any. If you try and benchmark against other brands or copy other brands, then you end up becoming like them. And I think we're unique enough to stand for what we are and what we want to do. I think Cupra should be the contemporary brand in the Volkswagen Group, the challenger brand, and the brand for the next generation of car lovers.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.